Alright, so I just went this engine restore and lube. You can see down there what it's all supposed to do. The main thing I'm getting it for was trying to increase the horsepower and fuel mileage, which would be increasing compression, so I get more torque out of the engine. This thing is a 2000 Volkswagen Jetta we're going to be working on. It's got 240 something thousand miles on this thing. So after that many miles, the piston rings usually start losing compression and letting blow by and other stuff happen to the engine inside. So we're going to add this and see if it actually does the job it's supposed to do. I'm going to check the compression here in just a minute and see what it is. I'm going to be checking the number 1 and the number 4 cylinder and just checking it and going by that compression on both of those and seeing if it increases the compression on them. So I haven't even tried doing anything yet. So far I've just got the spark plugs removed from the holes. Fuel is shut off. I just pulled the fuse for the pump, and I've got the coil pack unplugged down here, so there won't be any trying to fire up while I have this on there. So yeah, let's get into this. I want to install the pressure gauge, and then we'll check the compression. Alright, so we've got our vacuum gauge hooked up now to the number 1 cylinder. Go inside and we'll turn it over. Usually want to turn it over about 3 rotations, and that usually is about the max it's going to get. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, that's about 4 or 5 times. Let's see what we got on number 1. We're up to 120, 130-ish pounds. So not quite as high as the last time. Let's just see what our max one is. Let me turn it over a few times. Yeah, so about 175. I don't know if I could really get much better than that. Alright, so I'll go ahead and switch it over to the number 4 cylinder now. Alright, so we're on number 4 cylinder now. I'm going to go ahead, everything's off. I'm going to go ahead and crank it over. I can go ahead and do it about 5 times this time. Okay, there's about 5 or 6 right there. So, let's see what we got. So we got about 440 psi. Let it off and I'll try it again, but this time I'll do probably about 10 turns on it to our max, our peak power is. Or start building anything. See what we got here. There you go. So, a little over 150, but basically 150 psi, and that was 10 times, so that's probably going to be the max we're going to build on this one. So we're going to add it into the oil, and it's only about that much of a can when you open it up. You can see where I turn it all the way up. So it's pushing halfway right there. So I'm not going to put it all in, just probably about half of it. Just a teeny bit more. Okay. Because since my compression was so good, I would hate to put something in it and not, make it actually worse. So it's best if you got a decent running engine not to put anything in it. But since this has got 200,000 on it, I thought, at least try this and see. And I mean, I've heard good and bad things about it, so I thought I'd go ahead and try it out and see if it actually does work. So we'll go ahead and leave it there, and I can always add more later if it doesn't do anything and doesn't change the running of the engine or anything. If it doesn't hurt it, I might just go ahead and add it anyways, but it's good to try something the first few hundred miles and not put it all in. I still hear it in there. So yeah. Alright. Alright, so I've put a few hundred miles on the car now. We're going to go ahead and do the compression test and see if we've actually built up any more compression over these last few hundred miles. I have to say, actually driving the vehicle, it does feel like it's more responsive. It does seem like it's getting just a little bit better gas mileage now than it was before. So we'll see if the compression's up, and if so, then it's actually working. Alright, so we got our compression tester hooked up to the number 1 cylinder. We'll go ahead inside and we'll turn it over about 5 or 6 times. I believe that's about how many times it did the first time. Okay. We got close to 150 psi on number 1. Alright, so on the number 4 cylinder now, I'm going to go ahead and crank it over about 5 times and see what the pressure is on that one. Okay. So this one's actually increased some. We were about 140, I think, 145. It's a little bit over 150 now. So we'll go ahead and do about 10 turns on it to see what our max pressure is now. Okay. So about 165 right there. So there's not an extreme difference with that stuff in it, at least on the compression. I do feel like it's actually helped the running part of the engine. So it'll really be up to you to decide if it's actually worth it or not. Yeah, it just feels like the engine's more responsive now with that in it, but it could just be me thinking that. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and leave it in it for a little while longer, then I'm going to switch the oil out, you know, another 1,000 or so miles down the road. But yeah, really this engine just seemed like it was running pretty decent, or at least had pretty decent compression on it to begin with, as you can see at the beginning of the video. And this one had 200-something thousand. I thought it would be actually worse. But yeah, the maintenance has been kept up on this, so it definitely shows through the compression tests. So yeah, it just seemed like it did idle a little bit smoother with that put in it. You know, maybe if the cylinders are actually wet, you know, if it's actually in the running condition, it might have more compression, because really that's what it's supposed to do, is when the oil's actually flowing and shooting up inside the cylinder walls, it's actually supposed to be sealing it off. That's how it worked, at least in the description I read about it on the internet, on their website. It's supposed to have some sort of thing that fills in the little gaps and holes where the rings actually basically weld themselves to the sidewall and then rip it loose, and it leaves scarring on it. It's supposed to actually fill in those little spots so the ring can make a better seal. So maybe if it was actually, you know, running at regular RPM and throwing the oil up in there, it might get a better compression. But from just the dry tests that I'm doing, and these were dry, I have the fuel system drained. I pulled the plug out and cranked the engine up, so it just ran itself out of fuel. So there's no actual fuel getting into the cylinders while I'm doing these tests. So they were both dry. no sparking or anything, so they should all be basically the same. So I don't really see a big different margin, fluctuation. So, really it'll be up to you if you want to try it. It probably would work a little bit better if my engine had lower, compression ratios. But since it already had pretty decent ones, I just didn't think it could build up on that. And it actually seems like it decreased some, but it could just be this gauge. This is just a Harbor Freight sheet gauge. So who knows if it's 100% accurate. I've never actually tested against anything. But personal feeling, it does feel like the engine actually runs just a little bit smoother with it in it. And it appears like the fuel mileage has increased slightly. So, and since I haven't been able to do it on the other two cylinders that are underneath this cover here, because it just takes too much time and too much effort to do it off, take it off, we're just doing the two on each end. So there could have been a really bad cylinder in there that was really leaking by, and this could have helped it. We'll never really know. So, would I recommend it? Yeah, if you've got over 150,000 miles on your vehicle, then yeah, it probably wouldn't hurt dumping this in every few oil changes. But if it's a brand new vehicle with like less than 100,000, no, I wouldn't recommend putting any additives in it until you get over like 100, and around 150 is probably when you could start adding in a few little additives just for the seals and stuff, because around 150 you start getting your oil leaks and stuff. So this stuff was supposed to increase the compression, which I don't really see, but it already had really good compression on it anyways. So, and it did say it was supposed to equal out compression across the engine, so maybe that's what it was doing, because it seems like both of these readings were pretty much the same on both ends. So I'm guessing like if one cylinder or two cylinders weren't getting a good compression, it's going to make that other cylinder move a whole lot faster, and it will probably build up more compression in the good ones, and in the bad ones it's going to leak by. So it would make a little more sense that way. Alright, so yes, I do recommend it only if you have a car over 150,000 miles. You could always just add it in for one oil change and then drain it out and not use it for a while and then put it back in. Alright, well, hope this helps somebody out there to make up their mind. So if you liked it, please like and share the video, and consider subscribing. It really helps. Thank you.